Town Select Board meeting. Would you please all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up is the acceptance and/or corrections of the minutes from 3/9/20 and 3/16/20.
I'll make a motion, we do the acceptance and corrections of minutes for 3/9/20 public and 3/16/20 public.
Second that.
Any discussion, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Seeing none, motion passes. We have no announcements tonight. The second thing we need to do then is select a new board chair. That's normally the first regular meeting after election. Pardon me?
Just waiting for you.
No, we're ready, go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to nominate Collis for chair.
I'll second that one.
Be happy to serve if that's the wishes of the board.
I don't see why not. You've done it before.
I have.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? We want to slide over, Collis?
Yeah.
And I'll go over some stuff with you that we've got going
Yeah.
for tonight.
Yeah.
Take your other stuff with you.
Yeah,
Over here.
yeah, yeah. There you
All right.
Oh, yeah. You want to change
Oh, the name
name,
tags.
your
Yeah.
name
Yeah.
placards as well?
go. All right. Okay, so next on the agenda is to review the rules of procedure. We do this every year. There are copies in your packet. Everybody had a chance to look at them. Is there any suggested changes or recommendation to the rules of procedure
Make a motion that we continue the rules as presented.
with no changes?
Second.
Motion by Peter, seconded by Mark. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. We'll adopt the rules of procedure as presented. Town Administrators Report.
Yes, thank you. At tab 5A, you have your committee meeting schedule this week. On Thursday night at 7 PM, the planning board is meeting in room 106. I do anticipate there will be some adjustments on exactly how that meeting is run with the emergency order that came down from the governor's office this afternoon, but we will work with planning staff and the planning board chair to continue moving forward with that meeting. At the next tab, you have, let's see, you have assessor's recommendations. Town assessor recommends an application for prorated assessment for damaged buildings on map 11, lot 9A-4.
Make a motion to approve the assessor's recommendation as presented.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Second the motion?
A second.
Motion made by Mark, seconded by Peter. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And motion carries.
At the next page, you have the 2020 Capital Reserve Fund deposits. These were both approved at town meeting on March 10th. So it would be to approve the deposit of $225,000 to the Fire Department Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund and to pay said funds from the unassigned fund balance as voted. And then a separate motion, if you would, to approve the deposit for $100,000 to the Grassmere Town Hall Capital Reserve Fund, paid from said funds from the unassigned fund balance as voted.
Let's take those
I'll
individually.
make a motion that we approve the deposit of $225,000 to the Fire Department Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund and direct the treasurer to pay said funds from the unassigned fund balance as voted.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Peter, seconded by Chet, we're going to do this again. aren't we?
Yeah.
Any discussion?
Been there, done that.
Must be something about that corner.
And I'll make a motion that we approve.
Wait a minute, any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, the motion carries. Thank you. Now the second one.
Make a motion, we approve the deposit of $100,000 to the Grassmere Town Hall Capital Reserve Fund and direct the treasurer to pay said fund from the unassigned fund balance as voted.
Thank you. Motion by Mark. Do we have a second? Second by Kelly. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
The next item, you have a request from the Highway Safety Committee. Normally, the police chief would bring those recommendations forward, but we pushed those back a couple weeks as we didn't know what was going to be happening with the meetings. The committee reviewed one request to reduce speed limit on Shirley Hill Road at Tanager. And one of the solutions that came up was to install a convex mirror coming out of Tanager. But they'd like to do a trial run and see if that will provide sight line as you're coming down that. It's kind of a nasty curve. So this would be permission to install a temporary convex mirror within the town's right-of-way. Give it a trial period, see how it works out. If it does work out, then the person that made the initial request, as well as the Highway Safety Committee, would come forward to install a similar one on a butter's property, getting that abutter's permission.
The abutter would have to approve it, and then they would put the convex sign, right.
Yes, I think the feeling was they didn't want to go through with going to the property owner, making that request if it wasn't going to work, so.
So we're going to do this trial run. How's the information going to come back to us from the trial run saying thumbs up, thumbs down, needs to be modified?
Maybe I can get a little help from DPW or
How would the mechanics of that work?
the police chief can just talk to how we can get that feedback.
Hey, Chief.
Actually, it's going to be from the people.
What was the, I didn't hear the exact question.
So, yeah, a trial run sounds appropriate. How are we going to get feedback on the trial run, whether it was thumbs up, thumbs down?
Well,
Did it
there's
work?
a group of neighbors that they're going to purchase the convex mirror and put it up. The idea is we're going to reach back out to them. They have a kind of a point of contact, and we're going to see if they feel over the next couple of weeks that it's working out for them.
There's one gentleman that's kind of leading the charge.
Is he?
He
Yeah.
put in a request, I think,
So he's a
about
neighbor
10 years
guy.
ago to try to reduce the speed on Shirley Hill again, and it just, that corner is really, really just nasty. So he's going to try this, and he's going to give us the feedback, and if it's good, we'll come back to the board here.
Is he going to purchase the mirror, install the mirror?
We told them that it would have to be him or the neighborhood to buy it and then ask the abutters to put it on their property. He's asking for the trial basis to go into the town's kind of portion of the land, the right of way, to put it on a tree there, just to see if it's gonna work before he goes through all that.
If you're familiar with that spot, there's a turn right there.
Nasty.
It's very blind. So he also, DPW director also said that we could put another sign, a regular warning, not a warning, so about a caution sign more or less, that shows that there's a road coming in, where there is that one there now.
The curve ahead with a line underneath
Yeah.
it pretty much shows
Yep.
what it's actually.
And then also possibly some of the warning arrows we could put in that turn. As ju-
And
Just
I
as we knew was gonna happen, we repaved Shirley Hill Road, and now people are flying down there, so.
Part of those hash marks we were thinking about putting in after the road was completely done this summer, if we get to that point. That way, they're not putting up, fresh signage and then taking it down while they're trying to pave. So they were gonna put that in after the fact. That was kind of the recommendation from there. This quick one was just to put the convex up there on the town's property just to see if it would work, so.
Does anybody else have any comments? Kelly, again? Questions or issues with it?
Is there a time frame mentioned? 30, 60, 90 days, 120?
He didn't mention it, we didn't mention it to the gentleman. I can reach back out to him, maybe give him 30 days if that's the board, I think that's probably appropriate, 30 days. I think the concern originally was, as they're getting into, if they shut the road down for construction, now nobody's going down that road, so during that time, it wouldn't really make sense, but he just wanted to test it now before they went into that construction. So we could say 30 days and see how he feels.
So Chief, can you meet with the advocate of this neighborhood group?
Absolutely.
Pull in DPW or whoever else to make sure it's the right location, talk about duration and when it's going to come down, who's going to be responsible for it.
And I'll bring that to the board when we do all the other ones we have for him.
Okay, thank you.
All set? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of public hearings tonight at 6:30 and 6:45.
I think you've also public
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah, why don't we do public comment? Is there anybody in public who'd like to comment? Yes, step right up, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Barbara Griffin, Merrill Road here in Goffstown. I'm here to comment on a couple of things that you've just heard tonight, and because I just do that, sorry. And the thing that I came down here to comment on. One, I understand the situation at Shirley Hill and Tanager Road. I'm pretty familiar with it. I drive it nearly every day. I would suggest that whenever you set the time period, that you need to make sure you include at least 2 weeks of school being in session, because school has dramatically impacted the traffic on our roads, and you're not going to get a true feeling for what impact it has, if any, until you get that level of traffic volume back. In regards to the COVID-19 notices that are online, I had the opportunity to speak with the police chief a little bit after the meeting last week, and I would suggest that the website be updated to notice that there are some services that can still be provided at the window. I don't know that whether the fire department is doing burning permits at the window, because I know that to pay $3 for the online permit just fries me. But that's the way it goes. But the police are in fact doing things at the window. And the thing that I wanted to follow up from your last meeting of Thursday was in regards to 91A3, Section I, in regards to consideration of matters for which your emergency functions. That was some discussion. There have been apparently some decisions made in non-public session on a meeting that I still don't know that there are any minutes available. And because of the type of motions that are made when you're out of non-public, it's really sort of impossible to tell what the action is. I don't know whether Derek had an opportunity to hear back from NHMA. NHMA, I'm sure, is doing the same sort of staffing considerations that everybody else is, so perhaps he did not. But I have a copy of 91A3 for you, because just hearing about it is sometimes not enough. But it says, consideration of matters relating to the preparation for and the carrying out of emergency functions, comma, including training to carry out such functions, comma, developed by a local or state safety officials that are directly intended to thwart a deliberate act that is intended to result in widespread or severe damage to property or widespread injury or loss of life. So it is related to a particular incident. I did some history searching. This is a little bit out of days of 9/11. And I will say I was able to find online, even if Derek wasn't able to speak to NHMA, their advisory, which is online currently in regards to the right to know law. And while it doesn't specifically cite letter I, it does say that non-public session is appropriate for blah, 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 preparation for and carrying out of emergency functions related to terrorism. So I believe that any use of this board for non-public session in regards to scheduling of our town functions as a result of any sort of action for COVID-19 is absolutely invalid and contrary to 91A, and that any discussion in regards to that staffing of any department needs to be done in public. I'll pass these to Gail so you have it for the record. I will also point out that I went to the transfer station on Saturday at 2:30. It had been quite busy with approximately 292 visitors at that point in time, and the 2:30 rush had begun. So thank you very much. I think you need to consider those as you go forward.
Derek, did you have a chance to talk to anybody at NHMA?
Yes, I distributed that, that email on Friday to all the select board members as well as department heads. And they they had a similar opinion to what Ms. Griffin is saying here tonight, that it really is to the deliberate act that needs to be. So that was distributed to board members via email.
And if I understood it,
So the key here is it has to be a deliberate act of terrorism. Is that what you said, Mark?
Terrorism.
Yeah.
Collis, and I also understood it, when you're dealing with if you're talking about the group of employees, doesn't really, if it's talking about a particular employee, that made a difference.
The second question that I asked was, when we're talking about compensation or use of different types of leave, if you're referring to a group of employees, then yes, that's more appropriate for public. The compensation of a public employee is when you're talking about specific compensation of one distinct employee.
Okay, just so we're all understanding, thank you.
Well, we've got quite a bit of time until our first public hearing was scheduled. We have 15 minutes, so want to talk about the leave policies? Why don't we bring us up to speed on that?
Okay, I'd like to ask Danielle
Yeah, that'd be great.
if she had a little bit of an update to what's in your packet and what was discussed on Thursday.
Good evening.
Thank you.
So some of the updates relative to the items we discussed last week. Hopefully you all saw the email that went out about the employee assistance programs. That is available to all of our employees, volunteers, part-time employees, and everyone in their household above the age of 18. So that notice is out there. There's another email going out about the expansion of healthcare coverage, and that again is just an expansion of coverage, no change to policies specifically. When we get into the policy changes that were coming from the most recent update in relation to the law changes, FMLA expansion and sick time expansion, I have a few updates. Originally, we were under the impression that a certain classification of healthcare employees and possibly emergency personnel could be excluded from the FMLA. However, in reading through the law, it actually says the regulatory authority resides with the Department of Labor Secretary at the federal level. The Department of Labor at this point has not made any action to put that into effect, or has not said how anybody would go about getting that exception if they wanted to. So as we understand it, the FMLA expansion and all of the related changes to FMLA would be subject to all of our class of employees. No one would be excluded from that. Additionally, there was a question about the law's effective date. We knew it had to be by April 2nd, but we were kind of still researching whether we could implement it sooner. The Department of Labor's direction on that is do not implement it sooner under the terms of the law. If we do any implementation sooner, it would be under our own policies, which we are able to do. However, the clock all restarts on April 2nd when the law takes effect. So the FMLA leave times up to the 12 weeks would restart on April 2nd. Any questions on the FMLA?
Why wouldn't we do it now?
We can do it now, it's just it wouldn't count towards the 12 weeks. And any changes that we choose to make would be changes to our policy based on how we're processing. Like, for instance, the FMLA says the first 10 days could be unpaid, or an employee could take time of their choice. We don't have to put that into effect, or if we do, we can say whether or not they can use any leave time, or if they have to use leave time applicable to the type of leave they're taking.
We're
So,
only talking a few days, right? I mean, from the second, now to the second.
yeah, the biggest thing is to make sure that we're all aware that if somebody takes FMLA starting now, that's not counting towards their 12-week allotment. That starts again on the 2nd. That's really the only major change. Also, the clock, the 10-day waiting period before the 2/3 pay kicks in, that would also restart on the 2nd. So that would be a choice right now if we wanted to allow people to use time to cover, which we do now. We do allow people to use paid leave to cover FMLA.
So do we need to
Question-
we need to
questions?
make a motion on that, or to approve it, or?
I think, yeah, you should have a discussion on whether you want to extend the additional benefits in this FMLA, and we can speak to each one with Danielle's help of, because again, this qualifies or employees that were not previously approved. Now it is an employee who's been employed for at least 30 days. There is no minimal hours or year of employment.
Do we have to separate the sick and the FMLA enactments, because they were separate before?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make that motion then, that we enact the sick leave expanded qualifiers for all employees in the town effective today.
The sick leave or the
March 23rd.
FMLA, because we didn't talk about the updates
I'm
for
sorry,
sick
Danielle?
leave.
What'd you
Oh.
say?
Sorry.
No, okay, that's fine. I was gonna do both, but do that. I'll redact my motion, and I'll wait till she's done.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
For sick leave, a couple other updates include, it's the same effective date, so we could do that earlier. The difference is the emergency sick time that is afforded under the expansion of the sick time leave would be starting on April 2nd. So right now, we'd be under our current accruals for sick time, but the biggest difference to the sick time change, in addition to the hours, is the reasons that employees can use to take off sick time. So that would be the biggest change. And then the other component to discuss would be the fact that the 2-week equivalent for part-time employees or employees who don't currently have sick time accrual under this law, we'd have to figure out how we're doing a look back. I recommend a 1-year time frame, because that's what we use when we're calculating workers' comp, to see what their average is.
Makes sense.
And that's prorated based on annual, okay,
Yes.
average.
Yes.
So then I would agree.
Yeah, it's a 2-week average is the time that would be extended to them if they qualified under one of the new categories for sick leave.
So you're gonna have a new motion?
Yes.
Okay.
I will make a motion that we enact the new sick leave sick time regulations effective tomorrow.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Peter. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Please.
Danielle, the sick leave, I think the direction was to not give that 80 days until April 2nd. Is that correct?
Well, the 80 days and the additional time.
Or the 80 hours, I should
Yeah,
say?
80 hours, because 80 days.
Yeah. The additional time, I would recommend that we give that as somebody qualifies, but under the law, we would have to restart that on April 2nd. So I'd say,
So if you give the 80 hours, it would restart on April 2nd, just so you're aware.
That's only a week away.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yep,
short,
I just
short
wanna-
duration.
Okay.
So I'll make the second motion that we enact the new expanded FMLA regulations to all employees effective tomorrow.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by Kelly, seconded by Peter. Is there, relative to the FMLA, is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Danielle, I know you were working on a FAQ for employees. Can we roll that out in conjunction so that they have resources and the updated guidelines for everything when we put that out?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been some change in the guidance that's come down from the state about when people should self-isolate. So it differs with a little bit that what we gave employees last week, so we'll update that information as well and then provide them this information.
And one more thing, please. Can I request that we do an additional update of the status of our buildings after tonight, once we talk about everything, just to put a fresh date on it, as it's been 4 days or something like that, but still, just to keep it.
Yeah, I think we
Current.
should. That's a good recommendation, yeah. What's next, Danielle?
Okay. So just to clarify, emergency responders are not being disqualified from either of those, because the sick time one is still at the local level. The regulatory authority was the FMLA, so we're all on the same page. Okay. Another point of clarification, we're not going to issue the time in advance. We're going to wait for an employee to actually qualify under the emergency sick leave and then grant it to them at that point. For the
Can we
accruals.
clarify that that's statutory?
That is
that's-
correct.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean,
Great.
you could choose to go through and build another accrual and grant all of the hours to every single employee and then wipe it out at the end of the year. But I think it would make sense for us to, as people qualify under these new terms, grant them those hours.
Also, just back thinking on that, if we're gonna do a average for employees, can we do it as of the end of last month, looking back a year, so that these change in time schedules for the past 3 weeks doesn't impact their average? I mean, it wouldn't make a big difference, but just to be,
No, I'll line up that way, yeah.
yeah, let's just do it at the end of,
End of
End of February?
yes,
February.
please.
Okay. And then, two other questions related to this. The emergency leave, currently, we're trying to determine if there's an impact on accruals. Right now, under emergency leave, as we get into further discussions tonight, it doesn't address if somebody's out on emergency leave. It does address if somebody's out on sick time, their accruals would stop if they're beyond half of a month. Do we want to make any changes to the emergency leave or stipulate anything like that, or if they're out on emergency leave?
I guess my question would be, what, with the current sick and FMLA expansions, would be not covered under our current emergency leave policy? I know it specifically didn't say,
Closure of the
Bereavement?
building.
and the
Is it-
schedule change in
Mhm.
closing the building?
Yeah.
Do you have any other ones you can think of?
Those are really the three that would fall under emergency.
But I would like to add specifically, and I know we talked about this policy-wise, that we add a bereavement clause in there as well, since it doesn't specifically state that anywhere.
You want to set up a time, the amount of time that they get for bereavement?
3 and 5 days. It's pretty standard, or 1 and 3 days, however you want to, for immediate versus non-immediate
Right.
family.
I think the way the language is in there currently is it defines what immediate family and it is.
Okay, great.
Emergency leave is only for the immediate family. It just doesn't give the timeline for how many.
And it's specific as to what relatives that covers.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yep, it does specifically spell that out. That change was made a couple years ago.
So we should decide on the time.
What is the time? Is it, it's not, you
And
said
that is not stated, so it'd be what you want. Right now, it's only for immediate family. Mother, father, sister, brother. I don't have it. We can get that for you, but.
I would
it's
make,
for-
I would make a motion that we do 5 days for that
That's pretty typical.
immediate family, and then I would also make a motion that we, I include in the motion, 1 day for, not immediate, but relative, like cousins and things like that.
So
That
five,
stuff comes up every once in a while, I mean,
5 days for immediate relatives as defined,
yeah.
and then 1 day for,
SHRM will have guidance for us
Yeah.
on those additional categories that are typically included in things like that. The HR kind of overbody that we use, they're kind of the professional guideline basis for HR matters, and they have documentation
so this
on
next family,
other.
next layer of family is
So it'd
like
be like
in-laws and
aunt,
Right,
in-law,
right,
yeah.
exactly.
cousins.
Aunts, uncles, in-laws, things like that.
Step
Well, in-law.
parents, which
Yeah,
usually aren't
right.
included in the first, or maybe they are now, I can't remember, but.
So do you want us to
So-
bring that to the next meeting, what the next layer? Because normally,
Yeah,
under the
let-
personnel policy,
that's fine.
Yeah,
it
let's be-
requires a 30-day posting.
Yeah, let's bring it to the next meeting so we can be specific about it.
Okay.
Make sure everybody understands what.
But that's on
categories.
top of, so the bereavement expansion. And then the building closures and schedule
And
changes.
schedule changes. Yeah, so your closure, building, schedule changes, and then we're gonna get back, next meeting, we'll talk about the bereavement.
Well,
How we're gonna set limits on that.
Oh, the question that I had last time is, under the emergency leave policy, do you accrue on emergency time? Typically you don't, but that's not laid out in
It's
our.
not
So
spelled
the
out.
que- is the
Yeah.
question, can you accumulate
Correct.
emergency leave time?
Can you, any of your normal accruals,
Right.
would you accrue, which we don't typically do it in that instance, but does that impact time off or anything like that? So, that, I mean, that's a SHRM question as well, we can look up.
Okay,
Currently, our policies don't have that stipulated.
we do not, yeah. So we get some clarification on those issues, Derek, and
Okay,
bring it back?
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I make one more comment about that? So we have bereavement, schedule change, building closure, and then I know we talked about the essential kind of clarification of a state of emergency and what that means. Is this a place where we would want to include that wording as well, that this would fall under that type of instance? I don't know.
You talking about an emergency declared by the governor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what that means, the automatic impact on our employees.
I mean, it
based
wouldn't
on-
hurt,
I would,
it wouldn't hurt to roll it in. I don't think we need to, but I
Yeah, I
don't
don't
know.
I don't
we
know
need to.
either.
I don't think it would.
well, the governor can claim a
Right.
state of emergency for a
Right.
different part of the state too, that
Right.
had nothing to do with us.
No, that's true.
So I don't know if we would want to include that.
I'm just throwing it out there, as a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff is new, and I know we talked about trying to roll stuff in for future use, so maybe just something for us to think about
Yeah.
how we outline it, but.
Well, I think when the governor declares a state of emergency, it's going to trump anything that we do anyways.
Well,
What else?
I'm not sure if that's true.
Well,
We went through the snowstorm situation and
Well, statewide emergency. I'm
Yeah.
talking about a statewide emergency.
Something to think about.
Yes, Danielle, sorry.
Also, in relation to emergency time, currently, I just want to make sure you're all aware that emergency time doesn't count towards overtime in our policies as it stands now, because emergency time has been typically for limited use.
Thank you.
Just want to keep that in mind if there are building closures or things that might extend how long that emergency time is.
Yeah.
Does it impact comp time in any way? Think of an instance.
Well, comp time, same as overtime, only in that if you would earn it at the overtime rate, you would earn comp time at time and a half.
That's true.
But if you don't earn it as overtime, then it would be just straight comp time.
Okay, thank you.
And then outside of the leaves, just an update on workers' comp changes. Primex did come down with some changes, and they are now offering coverage of lost wages for up to 14 days if an employee is quarantined but does not contract COVID. So
Say it again.
workers' compensation, they've expanded coverage so that initially they said they would only cover if an employee was exposed at work and tested positive,
Yep.
actually contracted coronavirus. Now they've expanded that to say that they'll cover the lost wages for up to 14 days if needing to quarantine for a potential exposure. Also, they're going to waive the 3-day waiting period.
Okay, how are they gonna, what's their application process? How are they doing,
So it's when
proven that it was at work?
So they haven't actually changed that. They've expanded it to all public employees. So we would put in our workers' comp incident explaining, what we believe to be the point of contact,
And the 3 days is waived?
and the 3 days is waived.
Automatic, or do we
Mhm.
still have to wait for an approval from them?
Nope, they said the 3 days is waived. Our employees currently are allowed to supplement, so we would supplement them, and then if workers' comp is approved, we would go back and credit their accruals for whatever amount they used while they were waiting the decision.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
What else you got?
That's it for changes and updates. Any other questions on that?
Questions from anybody? You got anything else? Any other questions, Peter?
Probably.
it's 6:30. Public
Oh,
hearing.
it is 6:30, isn't it? Great, good timing. Thank you, Danielle, for those updates.
You're at tab 6.
6, yeah. Okay, it's 6:30, it's time for our first public hearing under 674:40-A to accept public input and vote regarding acceptance of John King Drive as a public road. In compliance with RSA 674-40:40-A, Goffstown Select Board will conduct a public hearing beginning on March 23rd, 2020 at 6:30 PM, which is the hour we have arrived at Goffstown Town Hall, 16 Main Street, Mildred Stark, Room 106, Goffstown, New Hampshire, to accept public input and vote regarding acceptance of John King Drive as a public road. Derek, can you give us a brief background? And
This was, John King Drive is a road off of Shirley Hill Road. This is a subdivision that was approved by the Goffstown Planning Board. Both, you do have memos in your packet. You have the road tracking form and memos from DPW, basically saying that the checklist items have gone through and it's ready to be accepted. The town is currently holding a 10% cash maintenance bond, and that will remain in place for a 2-year period to make sure there are no issues with the road. And so it is at that point where it's ready to be accepted, and the town would take over maintenance of that road.
so the public meeting has been open. Is there anybody here who would like to comment at this time? Anyone? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I think, Derek, we can go right to a vote, can't we?
Yes, you can.
Okay, entertain a motion?
Make the motion, we approve the John King Drive as presented.
Thank you, Peter. A second on the motion?
I'll second that.
Chet, thank you. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll close the public hearing. Should have done that before the vote, but your public hearing is closed. We had a second public hearing scheduled for 6:45. We'll talk about that one in a little bit. I think we get a little bit more in cover here, I believe. Now, I want to look at the action matrix.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I found the question I had on, sorry, Danielle. For unemployment, were we able to get any guidance on what significantly reduced means as far as hours worked?
We reached out to New Hampshire Unemployment through the Employment Security Office. They are extremely busy at the moment with the additional claims that are coming in. They didn't have any clear definition. They're sticking by their significantly reduced as the terminology.
They're swamped.
They are, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Let's go over the action matrix. Wallace Road Roundabout,
We did receive, and I apologize, some of the packets that got cut up, that rightmost column, I think, looks like Selectman Bowen's got one of the good versions. But we did receive everything from VHB on Friday, late in the afternoon, the final technical memo, all the construction cost estimates. So I'll work with Adam and Mike Hillhouse. We'll go through those, and if we have any questions, we'll run those by. But they've basically given us the final product and short-term and long-term recommendations. We just haven't had a chance to review them as staff yet.
okay. So will that be in our meeting room, so if board
Yeah,
members
well,
want to review it?
like I said, I'd like for staff to have a chance to
Okay.
make sure that there's
Okay.
no errors or anything before we release it to you.
Okay,
Carl, speaking of meetings, we were going to schedule a meeting for Wednesday night with the department heads, reference COVID-19.
yes.
So yeah, today during the our EOC call, we've been some of the department heads would like to have a meeting with the select board to bring up very specific response issues to COVID-19, specific to my department. Currently, I've got 19 employees working in the building, but we are not open to the public at all. Working with Danielle to explore the possibility going to a week team shift where we split that in half and have half the people working remotely, and then open up to the public on an appointment only on a very limited basis. But we are, as much as the employees here have done a really good job working to service people remotely, there are still some things that we have to have some type of interaction with some of those motor vehicle requests and stuff like that. So we're finalizing that plan, and I know some of the other department heads may have had some adjustments as well, that they'd like to speak with the board with, on Wednesday night if possible.
Okay, so at 6 o'clock Wednesday night?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Good.
Can I ask a question?
Kelly?
I did have actually to ask a question about telework and remote opportunities, so can you have everyone include that in there? If there's the option to do that,
Yep.
what IT's capacity is to help with that? Just as we go through changes, kind of having that background would be helpful.
Okay.
I think that's what the plan was anyway. to
That
do
was the plan of it. The telework is changing. Fortunately, Brian did a great job that the day after town meeting, he put in his annual order for laptops, and he was one of the last ones that actually got shipped. So we should have enough to service those critical jobs.
So that too will be part of the bigger discussion on Wednesday night?
Yes.
With all the department heads?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Changes to personnel plan?
Again, we're kind of right now responding to,
Yeah.
with those changes with COVID. Once we get to a little bit better place, we can start working back
Yeah.
towards some of those items that were there.
Okay, thank you. Communication strategy?
Right now, we're working as an EOC to get that communication out. So we're working together as department heads and then continue to refine that.
Good. Thank you. Then a couple of grants here.
I don't know if the fire chief, if the status of those grants,
There is.
I know that they're out there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one grant that we have applied for right now is the AFG grant that closed on Friday, and we did submit that with the help of the finance director on time.
So we get in on time.
We did get that in on time. And then other than that, the other two that we were working on kind of got pushed off for right now.
Okay, thank you. Town vehicles.
I'll get that to you. I'll get that for Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Derek has been pretty busy.
Yeah.
Can I, Mr. Chair, can I just, the other thing, and I don't know, maybe the fire chief can come talk to the format of these public meetings moving forward and what his recommendation is. This afternoon, the governor sent down an emergency order that changes the way that this board, as well as our land use boards, are able to do public meetings, to go to an access by video conference or telephone. And just wanted to, again, I know this came up today from his perspective.
Yeah, as a town's EMD, we kind of talked about this during the EOC meeting today with the governor's latest announcement as far as limiting 10 people per meeting, is maybe going to some web-based type meeting or phone call in meeting. IT's done a great job with setting up a WebEx, it's called, for video conferencing so far for us. It seems to be working well. So I would kind of make that recommendation to the board moving forward, of moving towards those type of meetings for the foreseeable future right now, just again, to limit that social interaction and social distancing. I think it's best
Yeah,
practice.
I think we have to move in that direction. I mean, just look at the room tonight. I mean,
Exactly.
this is not what was anticipated
Correct.
when they asked us to do social distancing. Kelly?
Thank you. I know there were some regulations about the way in which we conduct public comment, that there still has to be a room designated with somebody there. Has that changed as far as you know?
My reading of it is, yes, it has changed. You need to provide public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. There needs to be a mechanism for the public to alert the public body that telephone conference is not working. And if it's, for some reason, if you've got a telephone conference that people aren't able to get into, at that point, the public body has to stop the meeting immediately. So it is going to take some coordination with IT to set that up. I think we're going to start testing that tomorrow. Again, we'll talk with the planning board on how they're going to conduct their meeting on Thursday.
So can I
Yeah.
ask that we put together a a press release of sorts to the public of what that means on how they can pre-submit questions or comments or concerns, and what that means of the ongoing meetings, how that works?
Peter?
I think before we put out any press releases, we need to work the bugs out, just to make sure it works. And I think somebody's gonna have to be here in order to run that for, I mean, how are you gonna run the phone if nobody's here?
Well, if it's a WebEx, you don't have to.
Not if you got a phone call.
You can do WebEx by phone, is that what we were
Correct.
thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
It does both. Selectman George Andrews, we've been doing the video one only, but there is an option in there to call.
How many of those have you
Call
done,
and do it.
chief?
So we've done 2, and I think as the town administrator said, we're still learning how to go to do it.
Yes.
It does take some getting used to, but I think it's smartest option to.
But at least you've done 2. I don't know
Yeah.
what else. So,
Yeah.
And there's-
Learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, we're
and
doing them every other
experiences.
day now.
There's an
Every other day?
app that you can use on your phone, so maybe IT could help put together some directions for the mobile app portion of it.
Yeah.
If you don't have a computer with a camera, you can use your phone camera, you can call in. Maybe we could set up a testing time period for a test group or us or whatever.
Yeah, IT and GTV are currently looking at it, and then what can we broadcast from that? Are there any limitations? Because we would still want to get the broadcast out over their usual means through GTV, YouTube, and Facebook. So, again, this just came down this afternoon. They're currently looking at that. So we anticipate probably doing some testing tomorrow and have a more definitive answer by the end of the day tomorrow on how we're going to move forward with this.
I'd like to know how, if it's just telephone, how you verify who you're talking to. Because like I said, anybody could call in and say, there's such and such, and you have no way of knowing. And if that person's putting in public comment, you want to make sure you got somebody, that public comment that lives here in Goffstown, and not somebody that lives in Ware that doesn't like the way the roads are done or something. And there's got to be a way that we can verify who you're talking to.
I guess more discussions with IT, see if we
Yeah,
can set that up.
I
or
mean-
not. Yeah. Yeah, keep us up to date on that, Derek. I mean, if we need to, we can throw that on next Wednesdays.
Okay, yeah. Ideally, everything, we can get it working tomorrow, and then Wednesday night, we can do that meeting.
Tell us what to
Even if we have to have a microphone here with people up on a screen and one staff here, that's significantly better than the entire board, plus a bunch of, especially in light of all the recommendations that are coming down.
So would it be possible for the first time that we try this, that somebody actually who's here, that whether it's Barbara or somebody who should be running the meeting, maybe set up in the back and just run from out the back, and just in case something happens, that they could step up?
Yeah, the first time we do this, I'd have IT and GTV ready to go, on hand to be able to adjust, and then we can refine how we're gonna do it. We've already talked to IT about getting planning board and zoning board, the site plans and the applications up onto a website where people can go and download them rather than coming into so we're working on that as well, so that process, so they can continue to move forward, so.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have somebody from IT on site, so if we get bugs, we can address them immediately.
Yep.
Right then and there.
And is this gonna be, once we go this route, is this gonna be a mandatory thing?
I think that would be appropriate, is to,
Until further notice. yeah.
until further notice, yeah, I think.
I guess under that, my only question would be what if we have board members who don't have access? I mean, with the phone option, that's most likely viable for everyone, but the computer might not be.
It has to be accessible by phone. You cannot
Right.
do just video. The changes that were made is, it has to be accessible by phone. We just think that we would most likely use WebEx, which is primarily a video option, and tie the phone into that, so we meet the requirement.
Okay.
That makes sense.
All right, I'll keep you updated tomorrow on how our testing goes on that.
So is the plan for us on Wednesday to be here?
No, ideally, the plan is to notice the meeting that that it'll be telephonic. Again, we've got to notice 24 hours before with those details, so we'll be working on that, and ideally, I'd have you participate remotely.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so we've gone by the 6:45 public hearing, although there's been suggestions and recommendations that we may not need to take that up tonight. This is on the fee structures.
Yeah, so tonight we had two public hearings that were noticed a few weeks ago. The first, John King Drive, I recommended, that's a pretty standard.
We already did that one, yep.
But the fee schedule, you may actually have some public comment because that does impact people directly. You may wish to open the public hearing and take any comment that's here tonight, but then renotice at a future date and time and vote on it at that point.
So you're suggesting we have the
Yeah,
public?
Yeah, we're all gathered here, we might as well do it.
Yeah.
Let's take comment. Okay. So, in compliance with RSA 41:9-A, the Goffstown Select Board will conduct a public hearing on March 23rd, 2020, that being today, beginning at 6:45, that hour having arrived and gone by, at the Goffstown Town Hall, 16 Main Street, Mildred Stark, Room 106, Goffstown, New Hampshire, to accept public input on the proposed update to the town-wide fee schedule in the administration, police, fire, public works, and parks and recreation departments. Copies of the proposed updates are available online at www.goffstown.com under public notices or in the town clerk's office. A vote is scheduled on these fee updates tonight. Just a little background, Derek, before I open the public hearing.
So this initiated out of the annual review by Parks and Rec. They had some recommendations, and then the other departments at the board's direction reviewed all of the fees and made various recommendations to the boards to changes. This was discussed on the meeting on March 9th. So
And quite
again,
frankly, there weren't a lot of them.
no, there are not a lot. No.
Okay, so with that brief background, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment? Now would be your opportunity. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and we can go right to a vote, I believe.
I guess my suggestion would be is to postpone and renotice a second public hearing. There's nothing in the statute that prohibits it, but by that point, we can have the video conferencing, and we can have also a way for people to submit public comment prior to.
point.
Can I ask a question,
sure.
please? When we initially went through this, I had also asked that we include policies that we could review in retaining to rentals and fees, pertaining to rentals and fees.
Okay.
So rental of usage space and any policy that notes a town fee, and we were gonna include those. It doesn't necessarily impact
Well, so
the
we'd have to
vote,
look
but
for
we were gonna review those.
what town policies actually have a fee attached to them.
I think are you specific to the facility use fee, the facility use?
Yep, and the different rental
Mhm.
applications and policies for all of the different rental opportunities that residents have throughout town.
So all the forms and documentation that
Correct.
goes with it?
Yep, the department heads did start that process, so the next time we schedule this, once we figure out when we can do that, we can bring that forward as well. Those don't, those are policies, not ordinance, so those do not require a public hearing, but we can do those on the same night, and we'll
Okay.
take this up again.
Okay, so we're going to reschedule.
I think that's the best thing to do.
Schedule another public hearing.
Schedule a second public hearing once we've got the video meetings sorted out.
Okay. Makes sense. I think that completes our agenda. Do we have a?
Yeah, I'd like to bring up something.
Yep, sure.
Transfer station closing. We had talked that we were gonna try it this last Saturday.
Mhm.
And I think Adam has some updated information, and I think that we should listen to it and then determine that whether we're gonna open it or close it.
Yeah. Come on up, Adam, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so Ms. Griffin stole a little bit of my thunder. She got some numbers too from the transfer station. I think where we finally ended up was about 320 visitors on Saturday, which is fairly heavy. I would imagine that's a combination of the mild weather, but also the fact that people are going stir crazy and the honey-do lists and all that kind of stuff is getting churned through. Excess number of bed frames and mattresses, which all seem to be coming out at once. Whole lot of brush, a lot of repeat visitors for brush.
Was there any prominent peak time?
I didn't hear any report
Like
about that, you know.
Immediately
said it
after
was-
lunch, it went crazy. or-
Sounded pretty steady throughout
Okay.
the day. The other thing that's happened since we last met was on Friday, the Northeast Resources Recovery Association, or NRRA, they're sort of the advocate for recycling, and they do a lot of the coordination of certain things, tire, disposal, glass. They have that whole glass program, that sort of thing. So the NRRA had a conference call with officials from all the transfer stations around the state. And they conducted a poll, and they kind of were able to share with us the results of that poll. So to give you a snapshot of where other towns are right now, it's sort of a mixed bag. As of Friday, there was one town, Northfield, which closed their transfer station until further notice altogether. I don't know how long the health officer there is going to allow that kind of thing to happen, but let's keep our eye on that one, I guess. There are very many communities which still, of course, have source-separated recycling, where the residents bring their cans separate from their glass, separate from their paper, and on-site they dump into different bins. I know where I live, Amherst is one. Many of these towns have temporarily suspended all recycling. They don't want, for a few reasons. It is, excess time at the transfer station for folks while they're there, back and forth to the car with 10 different materials that they have to dump off individually, but also the employees there. Somebody's required to sort of screen, the recycling to make sure that somebody didn't throw the wrong type of plastic in the number 2 pile, for example. So now they're raking out and picking, bottles, cans, stuff that may have food waste, potentially other things on it. So I think they're trying to cut down on the exposure for the employees too. But I think mainly for the time that people were spending and now congregating because they're passing by each other, constantly as they dump all this off. So a lot of communities have done that. A few have modified hours, cut down either days of the week. I didn't see anybody that had canceled any Saturdays. So I know it's community-wide. That's usually a popular day. So it's all over the place, I guess. What I'd like to propose maybe right now would be continuing this next Saturday, remaining open as scheduled, but perhaps putting out some messaging, not necessarily prohibiting, but maybe discouraging folks from some of the extra stuff that is requiring extra visits, that may be non-essential trips. So encouraging people to try to do trash recycling only, and if you really don't have to, please don't bring out grandma's mattress and 2 refrigerators, and just because you're home with a lot of time on your hands. If you have to move, the reason I don't want to shut it down completely is if somebody's got a deadline, they have to be out of their house and they have something that has to get thrown away. I don't want it to end up on a roadside, because then we get the call anyway to go pick it up, from some dead end somewhere. So I'd like to maybe just try some social massaging. We'll use the term social in front of everything now. It'll be catchy, but some way to kind of discourage folks from that extra stuff that might not be totally necessary. And then maybe just see where we are next week. I have a feeling we might have had an early peak, as a lot of people were home, probably for the first or second week. Maybe things will kind of slow down on that end, and it won't be as big a deal. My primary concern at the transfer station, in addition to the number of people through there, is really the single point cash handling at the scale house. So the less people I can have interfacing with that person and handing over cash, the better. So got some discussion, good discussion in the EOC, and some more coming up, I'm sure, about that. But
So personally, as far as I'm concerned, 300 plus is a pretty significant number of people. Saturdays is one of the few times they have the opportunity to go down there and get rid of their stuff. And we've seen what happens in the past when you start cutting back on that. Where does the trash end up? It ends up on the side of the road, because they show up and see the gates closed at the transfer station. They're finding the nearest dirt road and they're throwing it out the back of the truck. So I'd like to see us to continue with it, Peter.
I'd just like to make a motion that the transfer station stays open on Saturday until further notice, until the DPW director comes back in, instead of coming in every week and trying to bring it up. It's open on Saturdays, normal hours, until something changes and the DPW director comes back and to ask for a change.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think it's an important public service. What do other folks think?
Yeah, I was gonna second Peter's motion, just to make sure that it does stay open.
Well, look, we can take it up under discussion. You want to make that motion, Peter?
Yes, that was a motion.
Okay, motion by Peter and was seconded by Mark. We'll continue with the Saturday operation as is until further notice.
Right. And the opportunity if something changes, it comes back in and approaches us.
And they'll keep us-
I just didn't want to say every week we gotta go.
I appreciate it.
You know?
I appreciate it.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep you posted.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks.
Anything else under other business? We don't have do we have a non-public?
I had
Yeah,
one-
we did.
I-
There's
I
one.
had-
Motion to go into
there's
non-public
one.
under RSA 91-A.
Sure, hold on, yep, go ahead, Barbara, please.
Second public comment, so.
Planning.
I think we have a wonderful staff, but I don't hold a lot of optimism for participation in Wednesday night's new format for your meeting, so good luck with all that. But I think this board needs to decide whether you're addressing the concerns of your employees or the public, because I think you're doing a couple of things and you're treating things a little differently depending on your approach. So with that, I want to talk about my planning board meeting. I don't know how you can run the meetings that you need to run without having somebody here. This building per se is not unsafe. You're having employees come here. You're not keeping it open to the public generally. That's a discussion of Derek indicated for another day. So it would seem to me that there is a cleaning procedure that can go on for this table and microphone that businesses are doing all over. And if my board members don't all want to attend, they can call in, and I have asked to determine, and I know they're working on it, to make sure that this can handle multiple call-ins. It would be very difficult for me to hold a planning board meeting off-site because I have applicants that come in with plans that want to point out certain things. Now, as to this Thursday's meeting, I wouldn't be surprised if I have an applicant request a continuance because of an issue with the conservation comment. It's quite common for me to have a meeting with a continuance request that day, which we then address at the meeting. Not a big deal. I mean, I will be here one way or another, and certain members have already informed me and staff that they're not going to come. And the order allows people then to call in. But I think you're going to have somebody here. And I will tell you that I don't have anything in the near future on my agenda that I'm worried about hordes of public showing up to attend. If I had a big project like Days of Old and maybe the Mill Street project, then I think we would have some issues. So, I mean, that's at least for me, getting the feet on the ground for Thursday night, allowing board members to call in and then maybe figure out what you want to do about public. I think you can notice the back rooms about public. You can rope off the top stair so that if anybody tries to go upstairs, it's clear they're not intended to go on that floor and they're to only come downstairs to this meeting. It can be recorded. People are used to seeing it online, I mean, on their TV, and I just don't, I think that for at least my planning board meetings will be acceptable. I heard some discussion about putting things online so people can review them online. I need you to understand that despite my position on the right to know in this most recent request, I'm usually one screaming about right to know goes way too far in requiring the production of stuff. So, I mean, I try to strike a balance, and I caution you to be careful in your zest to put things online or available other ways. You are going to be taking up a lot of staff time that otherwise is used up by the public. And when we go back to normal operations, the public comes back and there will be an expectation that if everything was done a certain way before, why doesn't it continue to be done that way now? So when you consider what you're going to change for procedures, you need to keep that in mind. And I come back to, you need to find the balance between your employees and the public, and the long term of what's going on. So I make those comments for you to consider, especially since you're going to be discussing that on Wednesday night. And I'll be having discussions with Derek about Thursday, but I know at least I'm going to be here. And if nobody else shows up, I understand under this emergency order, that's fine. They just call in and we can conduct business.
Thank you, Barbara. And I think you hit it. The operative word is balance. We've got to find that right balance.
Carlos, you've been on the planning board.
Yeah.
You know what it's like to have
Oh, yeah.
those big sets of
Oh, yeah,
plans.
I'm talking.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than, and Derek, you know, you've done too.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have a hard time at home with those big set of plans, spreading them out and following along,
Yeah.
and when that person's pointing
Yep.
on the board, this, you can look at it there,
And font that's this big. and-
yeah, I think I would have a hard time. But, I mean,
It's going to be a challenge for sure.
yeah, eventually, I think everything's gonna go that way, but
But just to clarify, it's an optional call-in at this point in time, correct?
Right.
well, Wednesday, you wanna do it full, right?
For
For-
this
for us,
board,
right.
I'd like to try it and do it, provided everything goes. And then I think I would leave it up to the chair of the specific board until such time that we get other direction from the governor's office that prohibits us from doing it, which would be a major change. Or if something else comes up through the emergency management director, at that point, I think I would bring that back to you. But if there's a real concern about holding meetings with more than the board members and people, then we might need to completely adjust. I think for this week and the time being, if the planning board wants to, the planning board chair is pretty clear that she wants to hold the meeting here. The members that can come in and participate, that's great. If those others can participate by telephone, we're allowed to do that. And then we'll work with applicants so they can get the procedure they most feel comfortable with.
So then my next question would be, is there going to be planning board staff here in the building on Thursday to come in and set up everything like they normally do?
There will be town hall staff. I don't know which it was. If it's got to be me, I will be here. Somebody will be here to work that telephone, to help set up and,
Set up whatever needs to
yes,
be.
and to get that meeting set up. Absolutely.
I mean, normally when we come down to the meetings, everything's set up and already,
Yep, and that will be done. I know that packets went out to planning board members on Friday, so they would either get them over the weekend or will be getting them in the coming days. So those that aren't able to participate in person will have all the necessary information.
Good, so Derek's offered to run point on that. and We'll
Yeah.
lean on you for
Yes.
making sure it goes off the way it needs to. Anything else? Any other business?
non-public?
Yep. Make motion.
RSA 91-A:3, 2B hiring.
Thank you. Got a motion to go into non-public by Peter. I need a second.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Second by Mark. It's a roll call. Peter?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you for watching. That ends our public portion of the meeting. We're going into non-public.
7:06.
Thank you very much.